fixed now.
What was it?
All right, let's see. Let's go there and see if we are on. I don't know. It was not recognizing the mic for some reason. Okay. So I had to just start a whole new one. We should be on right now, I think. Just let me go in here and check. Can you see if we're on, Audrey? Okay, live. One watching. I think we're up. Just waiting for it to come up on my end so I can see. There we go. Okay. Is anyone in the chat yet? So we can fix this. Man, yeah, the last 2 weeks we had no power, so we couldn't do. You good? Okay. Thank you, Audrey, for coming and telling me. So we are back. We are back. Can you hear me now? Wow. So last 2 weeks we had no electricity. I'll just start all over from scratch. So last 2 weeks we had no electricity. I don't know what happened, but there was a couple outlets in this building that just didn't work. And then the power in this room, none of it worked. This was the only room in both buildings that just had no power. And so I have to give a shout out to Keith for coming by and helping fix it. And then one of our YouTube subscribers and podcast listeners saw that we weren't having the podcast, and he messaged me and said, "Hey, I'm an electrician with like 22 years experience." This guy's name's Johnny. I met Johnny because he had a snake show up in his chicken coop, and he wanted the snake gone. And I went to remove it. I explained to him it's a rat snake. You kind of want this here. He was like, "No, I don't want it here. It's got to go." After removing multiple rat snakes, he finally, once he saw a copperhead, decided, okay, yeah, these are not bad to have around, because rat snakes are not eating copperheads, but they do compete for food with them. So they're really good to have, even if you have chickens. So can you guys hear me now? Okay. So I don't know what happened. So when I go live to record this podcast, we're doing this live on YouTube. But if I'm on my phone or my tablet, I can do a YouTube live through those devices. If you go on a laptop or a desktop computer, you can't go directly through YouTube and do a YouTube live. You have to have third-party software that you broadcast through. And this did an update, and for some reason it was not recognizing my microphone, and I don't know why, but we're here. So anyway, this is episode number 20. I'm your host, Jason Clark. This is the SnakesAreUsTv podcast. This episode, we're discussing books. And don't worry, there's a lot of books here. I'm not going to be going through every single one of these books, okay? Most of these I've read. And I'm going to be honest with you, like this one, I've never read this book. I don't know anything about it. Somebody gave it to me. It's just in my book, in my stack of books here. And like this book here, I did not buy this. Someone gave me a bearded dragon and a bunch of equipment, and this was in the box of bearded dragon stuff. So, a couple of these books I've not read, but most of these I have. And some of these are really good. Now, if some of you are like, I don't consider myself a reader, okay? Well, I don't consider myself a reader either. I don't sit down with a novel and just read it for enjoyment. I don't find enjoyment in reading. I don't like to read. Okay, I can read, but I don't just like sit down with a good book on a rainy day and read. That's not me. If I sit down with a book, it's because I want to get some information from this book I can somehow use in my life to do something with it. Okay, that's kind of what I am. Now, with that said, there's a couple books here that I'm going to recommend that are nonfiction, but they're more for entertainment, but they're really good. And some of you are like, well, if you give them a try, a lot of books are really good. Okay, I know that, but I don't have time to do all that. So now, these are not all of my reptile books. These are some of my reptile books, and these are not all of my books, because I have lots of other books that have nothing to do with reptiles. But these are just some of my reptile books, and some of these I bought new, some of these I bought used on the internet at yard sales, garage sales. Some of these, like this one right here, I just liked how the cover looked. I was like, that's a cool looking book. It is cool, but it just talks about different poisons and venoms and things, which is kind of cool. But where's the book? I was talking about this when you couldn't hear me, but I want to go back to this book because when my mic wasn't working a while ago. This, and before we do this, let me just say, we've been putting this so we record this podcast live every Thursday night at 8 o'clock sharp. We're never late. 8 o'clock on the dot is when we start. And if you want to be a part of the live, go to the YouTube channel, SnakesAreUsTv. You can join in on the live chat, and you can communicate with other people that are watching us right now. There's a bunch of people in the live chat. So you can go, let's see, we got, who all's in the live chat? Living with Cable. Now, Living with Cable, this is Chris. Living with Cable has a YouTube channel. He's a friend of mine, so go watch his YouTube. I went to Chris's shop today. Do you guys see these green lights that are glowing behind me? Okay. So they didn't come with a stand and didn't have a way to mount them. So I went to his shop and was asking for an idea. Within just a few minutes, he had made brackets for me to mount these on tripods to be able to put back here. Anyway, Chris can make almost anything. So we've got Reptiles and Oddities in the chat. We've got Ben Baker, Painted Rocks is back. Dennis Buckley is back. A lot of these people I recognize, you're here all the time. Taylor Eugene Simmons, Sun, Apple GT, Connor Taylor. Hello, Connor. Chris Taylor is back. Sugar Muffin, whoever that is. Thank y'all for joining us. Now, when we record the podcast on YouTube, I try not to do this podcast to where you have to watch it because we've been taking these episodes that we record on podcasts and we've already been making them available on streaming platforms, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, all these different places. So you can go there and listen to this podcast. So I want you to be able to listen to it and enjoy it and not have to watch it. So I'm going to try to explain some of the books I'm showing on camera. That way, if you're listening to this, it still makes sense. So this book right here I'm holding up is, you can tell it's kind of worn out. And it's, it just says a guide to field identification reptiles of North America. Now, the reason this little book is special to me is because when I really got into reptiles when I was a kid, I went to my library at school and I checked out this book. Yes, I still have it. But listen, hear me out. What had happened was, okay, it came time to return it to the library or I was going to be charged a late fee. So I did return it to the library. And I was going to, and they had some stupid policy. Once you return it, I was going to recheck it out right then. Now, maybe you can do that now. At the time, they would not let me do that. You had to wait 24 hours to check it back out, which was so stupid, I thought. So anyway, I go back the next day to get it, and the book's gone. Someone has checked out this book. So I'm like, well, how long can they have it? Like, well, they could have it for a couple weeks. I'm like, ugh. So a couple weeks came and went, and this book was not back in the library. I don't remember how I did it, but I found out which student at my school had checked this book out. And I went to them and said, listen, I'm trying to check out that book you got. Are you done with it? Can you take it back to the library so I can get it? So, like, oh, yeah. So they took it back, and I checked it out again, and then I guess I lost it and never took it back. Now, I didn't steal it because I did have to pay for it, okay? So I did have to pay for it, but this was one of my first reptile books, and I just loved this book because it had lizards and snakes and turtles and tortoises and crocodilians and all kind of stuff, and I just consumed this book, and I still have it, and I still love it. So this is one of my favorite books, but I'm going to just throw these down here. And before I go any further, let me mention a couple things. We do finally have in stock, as of today, Snakes Are Us TV t-shirts. It's got the Snakes Are Us TV logo on the front and the Southeastern Reptile Rescue logo on the back. And that is the only style color we have. These are 50-50 cotton polyester blends. So they're really lightweight and cool, and I wear those shirts all the time. They last. I've had some of those shirts I've worn for like 4 or 5 years now, and still last. We also have some Richardson brand hats, Southeastern Reptile Rescue logo right here on the front. And we also have a few of the Snakes Are Us TV hats with the leather patches on them. And I am proud to announce, I would very much like to announce that we have an online store set up on our website. I would like to announce that. I will not announce that because it's not true, because I was going to go do that, and I have not done that. So I don't have a way for you to buy any of these things I just showed you. I've got boxes of them in here. Anyway, I've got them, and you can't get them. But I'm going to make a way for you to get them through the website, which is SnakesAreUs.com. So you can buy them. Or you can go to the website, SnakesAreUs.com. In the menu, click on Show Schedule. There we'll have my full calendar of everywhere I'm going to be for 2025. Now, there's a bunch of events that will be added to the calendar that are not there yet. So I have several more events that are coming. There's a lot of cities that are there. So most of those are all in Georgia. My next event is going to be in Pennsylvania. I'll be there February 1st through February 9th. So I will have shirts with me. I'll have hats with me at these events until we sell out, and I'll order some more. So you can come out and buy them in person, or you can order them online, which hopefully I will have that set up in the next day or two. Probably not, but I'm going to try to. Okay. So, all right. So let's get to these. So, I mean, like, some of these books, like this book, like I said, somebody gave me this book. It was in a box of Bearded Dragon stuff. This book, I've never read this. Somebody gave me this book. And it's just, the Book of Deadly Animals. I'm sure the Book of Deadly Animals book has a lot of stories that are, I don't know. I don't even know anything about it. If they're fabricated, if they're not real. Some of these are like kids' books. Some of these are some cool kids' books. But I've got some of these books when I would give snake books to my kids when they were little. Before I would give the book to my kid, I would go through the book with a marker, and I would black things out that were not true and write in the margin what was true. Because the weird thing is, you talk about myths with snakes. There are so much misinformation from one snake book to another. And I don't know if it's like a typo or somebody was proofreading it and the author didn't go back and realize, this is not accurate. But so like some of these books were just given to me. These are like more like kids types. So this says Snakes, a concise guide to nature's perfect predators. Now, I have trouble believing that, because if this is a concise guide to snakes, it's pretty thin to be concise. Okay, so maybe I don't know what concise means. Maybe that's what it is. All right, now this book is one that I would like to recommend you get, but you have to be a lot smarter than me to understand it. But I do like this book. I know this is a pretty expensive book. I want to say this book's probably well over $100. Venomous Reptiles and Their Toxins by Brian Fry. Brian Fry is a herpetologist. He is a legit scientist and he's known as the Venom Doc, and he does tons of research on venoms, not just snake venoms, but all types of venomous creatures from around the world. He's actually from Australia, but this is a very technical book on venom. And if you're into venom, like I am, like venom really interests me, and how it works, the properties, and what it can do to your body, what it can do for your body through different medications they make with it. So this is a pretty cool book to have if you're like really want to get like deep into venom and all about it. So highly recommend Venomous Reptiles and Their Toxins by Brian Fry. That is an awesome, awesome book. Now, in just a little bit, not yet, I want to get to this book in a minute, because this is this little, This little book here, I was pretty lucky to get this book. And this has a neat story behind it. I'll get to this in a minute. Hopefully I won't forget it, but I'll get to that in a minute. This one was given to me. I don't know what this is. My Husband and Other Animals. I don't know what that book's about. Maybe it's a good one. Some of these books I read. Okay, so all these are crocodilians. This is about alligator and crocodile attacks. And this book is, this is all just worn out, but somebody, maybe I don't know where I got this, a yard sale or something. Now these are all alligator books. This one just has the life history of alligators. So some of these are really cool, but there's one alligator book somewhere in this stack. And it's not that I don't recommend you get these alligator books here, if you're into alligators and crocodilians, crocodiles, caimans, but there's one alligator book that if you're really into crocodilians or into alligators, I really recommend you get it. And it's in the stack somewhere. Maybe you guys can see it. We'll get to it. Because I really recommend that you get. I'm just throwing these books behind me. So those are just alligator books. Let's see here. This is, this one's okay. This one wasn't my favorite one. It's just called Bitten. And it's, Bitten, True Medical Stories of Bites and Stings. It's not like, it's more of informational type reading. So it's not like it's going to grip you and it's not a page turner by any means, but more informational book. But it's just called Bitten. So if you're interested, like I am, in stories of people being bitten by venomous snakes, things that happen to them. Now, this is another book that I'd recommend you get if you are really into venoms and toxins. This is, I guess, more of like a textbook kind of thing. It is very technical reading. It's not something you can just sit down and just, enjoy reading on a rainy afternoon. Okay. It is very technical. This is the name of this, if you're listening and not watching this, it's Handbook of Venoms and Toxins of Reptiles by Stephen Mackesy. I think that's how you say it. Is that it? Mackesy, Stephen Mackesy. And it's a pretty thick book, and this is a pretty expensive book from what I remember. This is the second edition, but it is a very technical version and goes into a lot of the molecular makeup even of venom. It's very, very technical book on venom. But if you're into that, maybe you'll like it. This is not a bad book. This, if you're into rattlesnakes of the United States and Canada, it's not my favorite rattlesnake book, but it's a pretty good book. Rattlesnakes of the United States and Canada. That's not a bad book to have. But there's some really good ones in here that I'm going to recommend. Okay, now this is the book I showed you a while ago from Dr. Brian Fry from Australia. I said he's called the Venom Doc. Well, here's his book entitled Venom Doc by Brian Fry. And it kind of tells his story, kind of all about him and his life. And he's a good snake guy. He knows his stuff because he's bald, He's a bald-headed snake guy. And when you're looking for snake guys that know what they're talking about, that's one of the things you want to look for is one that's bald. So anyway, I'd recommend reading stuff by him. Now, let me move to these over here before we get into these stacks of books and before we get into this one here. These right here, because there's different types of reptile books. So these are what I would qualify as field guides. And field guides, some are better than others for sure. I don't like the field guides that have black and white pictures of snakes. We're going to teach you how to identify snakes with this black and white picture because we didn't want to pay for ink. So it's not my favorite field guide. And the field guides that are worse, in my opinion, are the ones where they draw the snake. Hey, we're not going to go out in the field and actually find a snake, but we're going to draw what we think it looks like and teach you how to identify it. So I don't like the ones that are hand-drawn or the ones that they couldn't print in color. that tells you my level of reading. I like a lot of pictures in my books, okay? Lots of big, colorful pictures are the kind of books I like to read, all right? And I'm going to show you some of this. But these are not bad. Handbook of Snakes of the United States and Canada. And it's a 2-volume edition. So there's a lot of information in here, but it's just, I don't know. If I'm going to have an identification book, I want at least actual photos of the snakes. And see, like, okay, here's what I'm talking about. This is one of those books that has drawings of the reptiles. And even the drawings, they didn't even color them in. These are just, drawings of lizards, turtles, and snakes in this book. And so this is a Field Guide to Western Reptiles and Amphibians by Robert Stebbins. This is an older book. And this is a Field Guide to Reptiles and Amphibians of Eastern and Central North America. And it's basically the same thing. Now, this one is by a different author. This is Roger Canant. And usually things by him are a little bit better. So he's actually got some stuff in here. Now here's kind of what I'm talking about as far as information in these books. This is kind of why I like these books. So this book right here has first aid for snake bite. And they've gone in here and they've actually put in black and white photographs demonstrating first aid, at least how they used to do it. And this is an old book. I can't even read that. Is it 1979? 1978? Anyway, this book is as old as I am, okay? Which is not, so it's not that old. This is kind of a young book. But this is not how you do it. This shows putting on a constriction band or tourniquet. It talks about cutting the wound open. Oh, is there a Walmart receipt in there? Cutting the wound open, sucking out the venom. And so this is not how you want to do it. So there's a lot of old books you'll find that I like looking at, because it's got all this wrong information that years ago they thought was correct. Then it kind of makes you think, well, what information is in the new books that we think is correct now that we don't even know what we're talking about? So, the more you learn about snakes, the more you realize how much you don't know about snakes. Okay. Anyway, I'm going to go to the chat here in just a minute. If you're in the chat, keep chatting it up, and I will be in the chat here in just a second. We got some more people joining us. Chocolate Cookies. My Georgia Outlaw is here. So Georgia Outlaw is Keith. He's the one that assisted with the electrical issues I had here. He says, I have some original Southeastern Reptile Rescue t-shirts that are 13 years old and no longer in circulation. Who wants to start the bidding? Yes. Keith and Cody, his son, have been with me for a very long time. And if I could clone anybody, I would clone them and have many, many Keiths and Codys. Anyway, so these are just more. This is a Peterson Field Guide. Now this one gets into, there's actual photographs in here, which is cool. So, on the cover is drawings, but at least inside you actually have actual photographs. Well, never mind. As you flip through it and get to the snakes, it's drawings of snakes that they've colored, and they look pretty good. They're really, I couldn't draw this stuff. They're really, really good drawings. Why don't they just get actual pictures of the snakes? That's what I'm saying. I want to see a bunch of drawings of snakes, even though they're really good drawings. Yeah, you'd think a field guide, you want an actual photo of the snake. I have to admit, this book entitled Poison by Mark Seidel, Poison, Sinister Species with Deadly Consequences. I have not read this book. I bought it because I liked how it looked. I thought it was a cool looking book. And that's why I bought it. And I have not read it. So maybe I need to read that. But, and so so that's a turtle book. I love turtles and tortoises. I got a stack of books behind me. I'm throwing back here. Okay, now this book is another one that I would recommend you get. And this book is called Diamond in the Rough. And this is by Bruce Means. Bruce Means is the guru of the eastern diamondback rattlesnake. If you want to know anything about eastern diamondback rattlesnakes, Bruce Means is your guy. And there are color photographs in here. There's charts, tons and tons of detailed information in this book. And the really cool thing is this one is signed and autographed by the one and only Bruce Means. And you notice I do not have a dust jacket on this book. I do not have dust jackets, I think, on any of these books. And these books are much more valuable if they have dust jackets. Well, I don't plan to ever sell any of them. I don't care how valuable they are, but dust jackets annoy me. So when I buy a new book, I take off the dust jacket, I crumble it up, and I throw it away. Some of you book people are like cringing at the thought of me doing that. I don't care. I don't like them. I throw them away, and I don't look back. Okay? That's how I do it. So this book has got some interesting stuff in it. How snakes work. I mean, it's not a bad book. It's not one I'd say, oh, run it, you have to have this one. But it's not a bad book. How Snakes Work. Who wrote this one? Harvey B. Lillywhite. Harvey Lillywhite. Okay. So trying to find, I'm going to get to the books that I recommend. That a couple of these books, I'm like, you need to go out and buy this one now and read it, kind of thing. Now, this book is just entitled Venomous Reptiles of the United States, Canada, and northeastern New Mexico. And the cool thing, it's got color photos in it. This is not a bad book to have. It is by Ernst, Carl Ernst and Ernst, Venomous Reptiles of the United States, Canada, and northern Mexico. So that's not a bad book. I actually like that one. That's pretty cool. This is one, I think I picked it up at a yard sale somewhere. Boy's Book of Turtles and Lizards. And it's just some funny stuff in here about, I don't know, just some of the stories in here, some of the information they have is just really funny. They've got some black and white, really old, not very good photos. You can tell these photos were taken way before digital cameras. So the person took 20 pictures. None of them were good, but that's all they had, and they got the best one to put in the book. This is a pretty cool, and I picked this one up. Sometimes libraries will have books for sale that I guess no one checks them out anymore. And this is a really old book from like the 60s, I think. And it's called Snake Lore. And all it is, it's just crazy, ridiculous, dumb stories of snake stories that could never happen. Okay, let me give you an example. So recently, I had to go do an event in Atlanta, and it was for the Dallas Safari Club. And the Dallas Safari Club is out of Dallas, Texas, and it's a huge hunting and fishing outfitters thing. Really, really cool event. And so I was there speaking each day, and I had a booth set up, and so people would come out of the booth and just talk. And the cool thing, there was people from all over the world there. And I met people from several different countries, Africa and Asia and Australia. Well, these two guys, these two blokes came by from Australia, right? And they're at my booth and they're talking. And so I'm asking them questions, like pop culture questions about Australia. And they're telling me things that they think about America. And it's a really fun conversation. And we start talking about snakes. And he mentions the inland taipan, this deadly, deadly snake, the inland taipan. And then he starts talking about how aggressive the snake is, which is not at all. And he said there was a guy in Australia who was bitten 40 times by an inland taipan. That he's walking down the road and an inland taipan comes out of the bushes, come over and starts attacking him and biting him over and over and over. Snakes don't do this. So as I'm listening to him, I'm waiting on my chance to tell him, well, that's not snake behavior. I don't know who told you this, but this is not accurate. Snakes don't do. I'm waiting to get to this point in the conversation. Well, as he goes on with the story, he ends it with, and the snake, after biting him about 40 times, was so upset and so aggressive that the last bite, this inland taipan, bit the guy's leg and bit it so hard it broke his leg. So at this point, I understood there was nothing I could say to this man that would convince him that the story he told was completely made up. There's no part of what he said is true. But if he believed something that crazy, he was never going to believe the truth. So I said, that is an incredible story. And I left it. Sometimes you just have to leave it at that, okay? Now, this is a cool book. This is a really old book from the 50s or 60s, and it's called Amphibians and Reptiles of Georgia. And there's just some basic drawings in here. Here's some turtle drawings, and it kind of shows the scale count, the scoot count on a turtle shell, how to identify them by counting the scoots on the bottom. So, kind of some cool stuff in here. But it's really fun looking at these really old books. But, we'll get these other ones. This is a book that came out of the personal library of, what is that author? He wrote Brer Rabbit and the Tar Baby. What's his name? Whoever that author is. Amphibians, so more field books, Amphibians and Reptiles of Costa Rica and the Caribbean Slope, Western Amphibians. So there are tons of field guide books I've got. These are some old field guide books. But the best field guide, where is it? Oh, it's down here. Okay, let me get a couple of these real quick. History of the Okefenokee Swamp. Now, if you don't know what the Okefenokee Swamp is, Okefenokee Swamp is in South Georgia, and it borders the state of Florida, and it's about a 500,000 acre pristine wilderness swamp owned by the federal government. It is an amazing, amazing place. If you live on Earth at some point in your life, you should go there and see it. Or maybe you shouldn't. I don't want that many people going there. I like people, you go there and there's nobody there, which I like. So don't go to Okefenokee Swamp. Anyway, this is History of Okefenokee Swamp. This is a really old book. And as you read this book, you can tell that it's really old. And it talks about, like this one guy's story in here. He talks about how he takes like a 5-pound block of bacon into his backpack with him as he's canoeing, and he'll cut off some of the bacon and fry it and eat it to keep himself alive. And he talks about the different species of bear, like different types of bear that, I don't know. I didn't know there's different types of bear in Georgia. The black bear, the hog bear, the small black bear or hog. I don't know. Anyway, and here's a bookmark. So these bookmarks, I don't know how I made this thing, but this is a folded piece of paper I looked up online, and it filled something on the corner of the book. So anyway, really cool bookmark I made. Anyway, that's a cool one. This is the one I want to recommend to you. This is one I was looking for a while ago. If you're into alligators, crocodiles, caimans, crocodilians in general, this is the name of this book is Biology and Evolution of Crocodilians. This is by Gordon Grigg and David Kirshner, and this is an amazing book. It is an expensive book, but it is a really good book, and it is extremely detailed, tons of information. So if you want to know more than you ever thought you could ever know about alligators, crocodiles, or caimans, go get this book. This is one of my favorite books. I love alligators. I'm an alligator agent. I go and trap and relocate alligators. I own alligators. So I love alligators. I love learning about alligators, and this is an amazing book. So make sure if you're into that, that's one you should definitely buy. This book here, this is considered a collector's edition, collector's book, and these are hard to find. I don't remember where I bought this book, but I'm sure it was not cheap. It is, it's basically about herping. If you don't know what herping is, herpetology, study of amphibians and reptiles, HERP, herping is basically going out and looking for amphibians and reptiles. It's called herping, or snake hunting. I call it snake hunting, okay? But this book is Snakes and Snake Hunting by Carl Caulfield. And this is a hard to find book, especially if it's in good shape. This was in pretty decent shape. But it talks about him going out and catching snakes and his whole thing. And if you're into snakes and you read this book, it will make you want to go out and do everything that's in this book, which is some of the old timers out there when that book came out, that kind of got them into snakes. Now, is this the book that I don't like? This one's got something all over it too. I don't think this is it. There's one of these books. So now this is Snake Bit. Okay, now this is not it. This is one, it's just called Snake Bit. It's okay. This is interesting. If you are into timber rattlesnakes, you can learn a lot about timber rattlesnakes in this book. This is called America's Snake. You know, if you didn't know, before the bald eagle was the national symbol, it was the timber rattlesnake. And that's what it was going to be, the national symbol, was the timber rattlesnake. The "Don't Tread on Me" flag, So this details tons of information about the history of the timber rattlesnake, about it almost being the national symbol, and goes into tons of information about current research that they're doing on preserving timber rattlesnakes. That's not a bad book to have, informational. Stalking the Plumed Serpent. This is the Eastern Diamondback rattlesnake book I showed you, Diamonds in the Rough, Bruce Means. He knows all about Eastern Diamondbacks. This is his other book called Stalking the Plumed Serpent. And it just talks about his life and things that he's done, and going to Australia and catching 3-foot-long earthworms or something crazy. A lot of cool stuff in there. Okay, this is the one. I really like this one. Not that I didn't like the book. I don't know. I don't want to say anything bad about it, but this is called The Snake Charmer. And the author is Jamie James, The Snake Charmer, okay? And it's about a herpetologist at a university here in America, and he goes to Asia, and he's basically studying elapids, kraits. He's catching these kraits, which is an extremely venomous snake. And I don't know, all through it, he's just kind of, I don't know, like reading this book kind of made me not like the guy. And maybe if I had met him in person, maybe I would have liked him. But like reading the book about him getting bit with his research team, and he dies. He doesn't survive. I just ruined this book for somebody. Okay, teaser alert. It doesn't have a happy ending. But I don't know, he seemed to, I don't know. The way they portrayed the guy in the book made me not really like him too much. But anyway, we're going to go through these real quick. Venomous Snake. These are some kids' books. This, Turtles and Tortoises of the World. This book, I'm pretty sad about this book right here because it was in a box in my office and got water damage, and I'm really sad about this. This book was given to me by the author. And it says, What the Lord Said About Labs. That's the name of it. And the author is Jim Walkington. Jim Walkington is a personal friend of mine. And he even signed it to Jason, a fellow snaker. All the best, Jim Walkington. What this book is about, it's about training dogs, snake aversion training dogs to avoid getting bit by snakes. And Jim took me under his wing, taught me tons of stuff about snake aversion training, and has taught me so much over the years that I've known Jim. Really great guy. Jim lives in Arizona. What the Lord Said About Labs. Good book. And the cool thing about this book is in this book, he actually mentions me in this book and how I kind of took the training that he does and I added to it a little bit. So I thought that was kind of cool that he mentioned me in that book. So that's pretty neat. This book is not good anymore, but it used to be cool. I was a kid. This is a pop-up book of reptile. This is more my speed. Now, if those technical textbooks, if they had pop-ups like this, man, I could get through that pretty good. But it's got snakes and all kind of stuff in here. Pretty cool book. Now this book is this is a pretty special book to me. This is just called The Great Big Book of Snakes and Reptiles by Barbara Taylor and Mark O'Shea. It's got some really great photography in it, but there's nothing in the book that's special to me. The book itself is special, and I even left the tag where I purchased it for $12.99, left it on here because I was in a bookstore. Now, this is back when I was married. And I was in a bookstore, and my wife was in there, and I did not know that she had gone to the bathroom and had taken a pregnancy test and came out as I'm holding this book and tells me, hey, guess what? I'm pregnant, and we're going to have a kid. And we didn't have any kids. This is our first daughter, Audrey. And but anyway, I was holding this book when I found out that I was going to be a dad. And I was like, well, I have to buy the book now. So I've had this book since I found out I was going to have my first daughter, Audrey. So anyway, really cool. This is funny. Poisonous Snakes. A very thin book that talks about poison. This is a kid's book, I guess. But, and then the drawing, I guess that's by a kid too. I couldn't draw it that well, but, anyway. So a couple books over here I really want to tell you about. This has been kind of cool. What's Wrong with My Snake? Kind of gives you some info on how things that snakes have wrong with them. Vivarium, book of, I don't even know what this is about. I've never read this. Somebody gave me that. Some of these books, I don't know anything about them. I'll go to the chat here in a minute. Now this, I forgot I had this book. This is called Awesome Snake Science. And it is like different things you can do with kids to teach them about snakes. Now, my kids have been homeschooled since they were in kindergarten, and one of my daughters is still in homeschool program, and we do a co-op. And so I teach a reptile class at the co-op each week. And I forgot I had this. And I've already done one whole semester. So this next semester, which starts next week, I may look through this because this semester I'm teaching little kids. Last semester was a little bit older kids, but maybe there's some cool stuff in there. Some of these books are better than others. And don't let the names of some of these fool you. Like this says, Venomous Snakes of the World, a manual for use by U.S. Amphibious Forces, Department of the Navy, Bureau of Medicine and Surgery. I don't know that this was written by the Navy, but maybe they're saying it's for the Navy to make it seem like it's more legit or something. But it's not a bad book. It's just got, I don't know, like some of these books I'll flip through, and it's got snakes of different regions of the world. And I'll be flipping through this book expecting to see one particular snake. And they don't even have it in here. I'm like, well, that's a pretty important snake to leave out of the book. And I'm not saying it's that book, but some of these books. This book here is pretty cool. This is U.S. Guide to Venomous Snakes and Their Mimics. It just kind of shows you different venomous snakes and different non-venomous snakes that mimic those snakes. Reptiles are the strangest thing. The kids' book. Turtles and Tortoises for Dummies. Let me get through these really quick. What is that? Venomous Snakes of the World. Reptiles and Amphibians. We're going to skip all these. New Encyclopedia of Snakes. Hang on. I want to get over here. I want to get past all these because I want to show you a couple of these books. That's why they're so in bad shape, because I'm just throwing these things behind me in a pile back here. All right. So here's some more right here. These are some I would recommend you get. This is a pretty cool book, and it is called Amphibians and Reptiles of Georgia. Now, Why do I like this book? Well, one, I live in Georgia, okay? But it has a lot of really good information. Even if you don't live in Georgia, if you live in the southeastern United States, has a lot of really cool stuff in here. And it's got every single snake, turtle, tortoise, lizard, amphibian, alligator. But one really cool thing that it has in this book is that little albino timber rattlesnake. That photo I took, and it's got my name right there, Jason Clark. So I like that book because it's got my name in it. Okay. But other than that, it really is a good book because it gives you like 2 or 3 pages of each snake in Georgia, and range maps, and some good information. So don't buy it just because I'm telling you my name's in it. I don't get any money for this at all. But I always recommend this book if you live in Georgia or the southeastern U.S., or you want to know about reptiles that live in the southeastern U.S. So Amphibians and Reptiles of Georgia by John Jensen, a friend of mine, Carlos Camp, Whit Gibbons, and Matt Elliott. Matt Elliott, too. So some great people contributed to that book. And this is by Whit Gibbons and Mike Dorcas. This is also a good one. I recommend Snakes of the Southeast. And tons of really, and it's got photographs in it. They're not drawings. They're not black and white pictures, but full color photographs with range maps, and just a really good snake book of snakes of the southeastern United States. So really, some of these books are so much better. This is another one that I would definitely recommend that you go and buy. Venomous Reptiles of North America by Carl Ernst. I've always liked this book. It's got some color photographs, but it's some really good information in here in regards to venomous. It doesn't say venomous snakes because it has the Gila monster in here as well, and the beaded lizard, which are lizards that are venomous, so not snakes. This is a old book that I've had by Manny Rubio. It's just entitled Rattlesnake, and it's always been one of my favorite books. Really great pictures in here because you know how I am. I got to have some good pictures in my book. And this is definitely, oh yeah, there we go. It's got a whole section on venomous rattlesnake handling churches in here. So just the history of rattlesnakes, their life history. So tons of really good information in this book called Rattlesnake: Portrait of a Predator by Manny Rubio. All right. Now this little device here, look at this little thing. So this, I had to go somewhere around Atlanta several years ago. I don't even know when this was. 2020. So, okay, I know exactly when it was. It says it right here, September 9th, 2020. I went to Atlanta to a house because they were having trouble with snakes in their yard, and they had me come to their yard, walk their property with them, and kind of show them things that were attracting snakes, things they could do different on their property to not have as many venomous snakes around. Okay, so while I was there, he gave me this. I didn't know what it was. It's got like a silver dollar mounted in it, but this is 2 pieces of wood, and you slide the wood together, and it makes a little stand to sit a book on, which I was like, now that my desk is cleared off from all these books, I have room to do it. So I can kind of sit a book here and display it or read it or whatever you're doing with it. Anyway, this is a book that I think you should get to go read. Now, this is not a book that is like an informational textbook. If you like the idea of reading a book, which that's not me, okay? But if you like reading a good book, this is a good book to read. This is one of those books that you want to finish it. You want to keep reading. You want to finish this book. And it's called The Lizard King by Brian Christie. And it details the illegal reptile trade, some of it which happened here in Georgia. Most of this book takes place in Florida. And a lot of the people in this book are still alive today. And some of them are still in business today. You can go look them up. Anyway, this was an enjoyable book to read. Okay, The Lizard King by Brian Christie. Go get this. I really think you'll like it. It's a real eye opener. Okay, let's go to the chat real quick. And is anybody saying anything in the chat worth me reading? Okay. So we got Laura. Hello to you and your family. Thank you, Laura. And if you're not a regular in the chat, do me a favor and tell me where you're from. John, I can't see it way over there. What does it say? I need glasses so bad. I'm not going to wear them on the podcast. So. John McBurney Jr. Hello. Thank you for being here. Cheesy Cheetah is back. Where can you get the book, Snakes of Georgia, you're talking about? I ordered it on Amazon. Cheesy Cheetah mentions Tom Crutchfield. Yeah, he's in that book, Lizard King. He's not the main character, though, but it's a good. Now, this book right here, somebody gave me this book. I don't know where you would get this book. This is a really old book. But I did not think I would enjoy reading this book, but I really did. So this book is called The Wildest Game. The Wildest Game. And the author is, I can't even hardly read it, R-Y-H-I-N-E-R, Reiner, R-Y-H-I-N-E-R, and Mannix, M-A-N-N-I-X, Reiner and Mannix. The Wildest Game. What this is a book that details this man's life. And some of it is like sickening. But it's eye-opening and it's interesting because what it does, it goes through and it details how he would catch a rhino, how he would catch an elephant, how he would catch a leopard, certain exotic venomous snakes from all around the world, and he would use locals to do this. And then he would transport them back, and he would sell them to zoos all around America. You know, every animal you see in any zoo in any captivity came from the wild at some point. And this is one of the guys that kind of got it all started. And so whether you agree with keeping animals in captivity or you don't agree with it, it's still an interesting read to see what all they did and how it all came about. But it's called The Wildest Game, Reiner and Mannix. Really, really, really cool book. Wilderness, I have not read this book. Somebody gave me this. It is in rough shape, but it looks cool. I'm going to have to read that. But okay, a couple more books. We're going to wrap it up here in a minute. But before we do, I'm going to tell you about this. This has got a cool story behind this book right here. All right, so this book, let's see, this was The Big Book of Snakes. This one's not bad. It's got some good color photos. It has a lot of different kinds of snakes, some that you've probably never heard of before from all over the world. So this is a kind of a cool book, The Big Book of Snakes by Mark O'Shea. You don't know who Mark O'Shea is. He is a world-renowned herpetologist, definitely knows his stuff. Anything by people like that, it's going to be a pretty good book. So this book here has been good for me. This is by Whit Gibbons and Mike Dorcas. It's called North American Water Snakes. And some of your water snakes can be hard to tell which one's which. And this one kind of goes through and breaks all that down, has tons of range maps in here. So, I mean, you got to kind of really be into snakes to like some of these books. But this is a good one that specifically goes into tons of information about all the different water snakes that live in North America. So that's a cool one. It's like I said, it's by Gibbons and Dorcas, Whit Gibbons and Mike Dorcas, North American Water Snakes. So that's a good one. Okay, down to the last two books here, and these kind of go hand in hand. So let me tell you about these books. This is a big, thick book, and this is called Snakes of the Achistrodon Complex. What in the world does that mean? Snakes of the Achistrodon Complex. Snakes of the Achistrodon Complex basically refers to copperheads, cottonmouths, canteals, which I own all of those. And those are all related. but it has so much detailed information. It's got color photos, black and white photos, and is just more of a technical textbook, very detailed book about copperheads, cottonmouths, and their relatives, the cantills, the Achistrodon complex. So good book to have. Now, I did not have that book when I got this phone call. I got a phone call from an attorney who said, I have a court case involving a snake bite, a venomous snake bite. And I would like to see if I can meet with you and go over the details with you. I said, yeah, I mean, I guess. For what? He said, well, I just want to present it to you. I don't want to give you any more information. I just want to present it to you, and then I want to hear what you have to say about it. I said, okay. He said, I'll pay you for your time. I said, well, yeah, come on down. Pay me for my time. So we met at a law office. My mom works for an attorney, so we used the law office there, their boardroom, their conference room. Went in there, we met this attorney, I've never known before, and he has a whole box of information, folders and stuff. He has DVDs of videos and just medical records and tons of, affidavits and, I mean, all this, tons of paperwork. I'm like, what in the world? He wants me to read all this? What does he want me to do? So he starts going through, he says, okay, just let me lay the whole thing out for you. I'm going to give you every piece of information, unbiased from both sides. And then here's all the information we have from both sides. Here's all the paperwork. Go through all this. And I'll pay you to go through it. And I want your honest opinion as to what you think happened. So I don't know who this guy's representing or which side he's on. I don't know any of that stuff. So he starts telling me about a man who was bitten by a venomous snake. He was bitten by a venomous snake in a store at like the garden section of a store, okay? And this is not an uncommon thing. If you go and go on the internet and you search on Google or whatever, you can find all kinds of stories of people going into stores and picking up a potted plant or doing things in stores and getting bit by copperheads and rattlesnakes. And this happens a lot more than you think. So this is one of those cases. I don't know who he's representing here, but he lays out the entire case for me from beginning to end. And he's reading the affidavit that the guy who got bit wrote, and he's given all this information. And when he's done, he says, okay, and this took quite a while. He's like, okay, so what do you think? I said, I don't know. I said, I mean, from what you're telling me and for all this information that you have laid out here, I don't know who you're representing, but it sounds to me that this guy caught a copperhead in his yard, had it as a pet maybe, I don't know, and then several weeks or months after having the snake, he gets bit by it on the hand, and maybe he doesn't have any insurance. I don't know. So he comes up quickly with an idea, jumps in the car with his wife and friend, races to a store, runs in the store, throws the dead snake down, pretends it bit him in the store, and runs out. I said, that's what it sounds like to me. That's what I think happened. He said, okay, that's what we think happened too. And so we're representing the store. He said, so can I hire you as an expert witness? I said, well, yeah, I'm not an expert, but I can definitely be a witness and tell you what I think. But that's just what I think. I've got to have some data to back that up. And I don't know how to do that. That's just what I think. So he said, well, you're hired. I said, okay, well, great. I'm hired. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm hired. So I started just trying to research information about copperhead because it was a copperhead that had bit him. And I was trying to think, how can I piece all this information together? And so I ended up going to a reptile expo. If you're a reptile person, you know what a reptile expo is. They're awesome. If you're not a reptile person, Reptile Expo is, they have these events all over the country, and reptile people who breed specific types of reptiles, they pay to have a table there, and they'll set up the animals they've bred for that year, and they'll sell them to the public. You know, you've got tons of tables in there, you know, people selling reptiles. And so I went to one of those. It was out of state. I live in Georgia. It was a different state I went to. I drove to it and was walking around, and I walk up, and there's a big table. There's no reptiles, but just reptile books. And you know, I like reptile books. So I'm like, oh, look at all these reptile books. I've got that one and that one and that one and that one and this one. I don't have this one. I want to get this one. And I just happened to pick up a book about copperheads. It was like a kid's book about copperheads. And I was just like grasping for straws here, anything I can learn that I don't know about copperheads. And the guy says, oh, so you like copperheads, huh? I'm like, yeah. I mean, I like copperheads. Wasn't really thinking. He said, oh, let me show you something. And he reached under the table, and he wasn't even on display. He pulls this out from under the table. And this is written in 1960 from the University of Kansas. It's called The Autocology of the Copperhead. And it was, and I don't remember, I'd have to go through here and give you all the information, but basically it was like a 10-year study about copperheads. And they had so much detailed information in this book. And I said, yeah, is this book for sale? He said, yeah. I said, how much is it? He said, that's a hard book to get, and I don't think you'll find it anywhere else. That may or may not be true. These may be $1, okay, all of the internet, for all I know. I have no idea. I said, well, how much is it? He said, I'll let you have it for $20. I said, sold. So I got this book for $20. And I went back, and I just went all through this book. And then what I found was they had done so much detailed information in here that they have researched for years and years and years about copperheads. They had in here, on average, how far a male copperhead will generally move from point A to point B in a 24-hour period. How far a female will move from point A to point B in a 24-hour period. At what temperature can they physically crawl, and 1 degree below that, they can't physically move. I mean, just tons of information like this. I'm like, this is perfect. So then I went to the actual store where the bite happened. I measured the parking lot. I got the data off the internet of a year ago of what the weather temperature was, everything about it. And I took information from this book, and I took my measurements and all the information from the internet and from the store and the parking lot and where everything was, and I put it all on a graph. And I sent it to the attorney and said, okay, this is not my opinion. I said, I'm not giving you my opinion here. This may win the case. This may lose the case. But I'm going to give this to you. And this tells me what the copperhead that bit him could physically do when it got from point A to point B. Okay? And he loved it. And basically, they told me that information helped them get the case thrown out. They had offered to pay the guy's medical bills and everything, but he didn't want that. He wanted millions and millions of dollars. He didn't get any of that, apparently. But they definitely paid me for my services in doing that. But like I said, in the end, I didn't give them my opinion. I just gave them what the scientists had researched about copperheads specifically, and what they could physically do and what they couldn't, how far they could crawl in those temperatures. Could they have made it to this part of the store? Could they have done this? Could they have done that? And because it didn't seem like anything they said in that lawsuit was even accurate. All right, let's go to the chat real quick, and then I got one more thing we can go over before we do this. So Dennis Atkins says, my Bible has a snake in it. Yeah, that's a book. That's a book that has snakes in it. And, when it comes to the Bible talking about snakes, the Bible does not paint the picture of snakes like people think it does. Most of the scriptures that mention snakes mention them in a favorable light, So, like I tell people, when people come up to me and they'll say, don't you know the Lord cursed the serpent? I'm like, yeah, I know. But I ask them, how many times, because, it was Satan who chose to use the snake, not God. Satan chose to use it for evil. How many times in the Bible did Satan use a snake for evil? Well, one. How many times in all of history has Satan used people for evil? Well, you can't even count them, okay? Satan uses people for evil a lot more than he ever used a snake for evil. But anyway, there's a ton of information I can go into about snakes in the Bible and how they are not, people try to use the Bible to justify their lack of understanding and hatred of snakes. And if you actually go through the scriptures and read actually what it says about snakes, they don't put snakes in a bad light at all, in my opinion. Okay. Now, all these books we just went through, all these books were the accumulation of some people's entire lives. Like Bruce Means, for instance, Bruce Means and Diamond in the Rough. He spent his entire career gaining that knowledge to be able to put that book out, to create that. And what I'm starting to find out, not just from other people but from myself, is that you need to make sure in your life right now, especially if you ever feel sad, if you're feeling depressed. If you're feeling sad and you're feeling depressed, ask yourself this question. On a normal day, do you find yourself consuming or creating? Which one do you do? Do you consume more than you create? Because God created you. Now, if you're an atheist, God created you too. Okay, but the way it goes. God created man in his image. What that means, well, it means a lot of things, but one thing it means is that God is a creator. And the creator created you in his image. So he created you to create. We're supposed to create things. It doesn't mean that we're not supposed to consume things. But the problem is so many people consume a lot more than they create. And that can cause a problem, because what you start doing is you start comparing the worst part of yourself to the best part that people show you on social media, for instance. Now, what I've done on my cell phone, all my social media used to be on my home screen, and if somebody replied to a comment or I got a message, it would pop up in my notification. I could be notified of it. I took all that off my phone, all the notifications. I still have social media on my phone, but what I did, they're not on my home screen. They're on a different screen in a separate folder. So I have to scroll to that screen, click on the folder, go into the folder, and find social media to go to it. What I found is I don't go to these social media apps often throughout the day. Sometimes I don't even go to them every day. Sometimes every few days I'll go check my social media, and I like it. So I didn't do away with it because I think it's useful to have. But I've stopped trying to be as much of a consumer as I am a producer. I'm trying to produce more than I'm consuming. Because when you start consuming social media and you're looking, now, let me say, consume this channel. Listen to all the episodes, okay? Go watch all my videos. I try to make the videos that we do, uplifting and fun. There's enough depressing stuff in the world already. We don't need more of that stuff. I try to make this stuff fun where it's enjoyable. But whatever you're consuming, even this channel, make sure that you're balancing your life to where you're not consuming so much more than you're producing, because we're made to create. We're made to produce things. All right. So, all these people that you look at on social media and you start comparing yourself with these people, the only people in the entire world that are more interesting than you, that are smarter than you, that are just better people than you, the only people that are that way are people that you don't know very well. Okay? What I mean by that is, these people that you don't know them personally, of course that their life looks better than yours. But when you get to know these individuals, now not me, I'm pretty cool. Okay, I'm pretty cool all the way around. But other social media people. Okay, when you get to know these people in person, it's not always cracked up to be. It's not always what you think it is. Okay, so expect to be depressed. Expect to not be extremely happy if you're doom scrolling on your phone and you're watching video after podcast after even books, reading book after book after book, and consuming and consuming and consuming. If you're going to read 1 million books, that's fine, but write 2 million pages of stuff yourself. Make sure you're even if you don't put it out to the world. Even if you're going to say, okay, I got a YouTube channel. Say you want to start a YouTube channel, but you don't have the confidence to do it, okay? Go and record a video, start a YouTube channel, put the video on YouTube, but make it private where nobody can see it. Do several videos that way. At least you're doing it, putting it up there. Nobody can see it but you. Over time, you'll get the confidence to say, you know what? I'm actually not as horrible at this as I thought I was. And you can make them public for people to see, And so if you're going to write, it doesn't mean you have to write for anybody to ever read anything that you're writing. So when I'm talking about creating things or publishing or producing things, I'm not meaning that you have to produce and publish and create things that you have to share with people. These can be things that you create that you only share with yourself. But either way it goes, make sure that the amount of things that you create and the amount of things that you consume, that is balanced, because so many people in the world today have gotten in the place of consuming more than they create. That creates anxiety. It creates depression. It creates sadness. It creates loneliness. It creates all these things that we never intended for them to do. So just think about that this week. And I'm really glad to be back. I hated missing those 2 weeks. I don't want that to happen again. I will be back with you guys next week for episode number 21 of the SnakesAreUsTv podcast. Thank y'all so much for joining me this week. And last thing I need to tell you, even if you don't believe this, it is true, I'm telling you. Jesus loves you, and I do too. You guys have a great night.